Hey everyone, welcome back. Happy second day. Today I'm going to introduce the elements of art. There's the elements and the principles of art. Today I'm going to show you the elements. There's 7 elements. And then the principles I'm going to show you on Monday when we come back from our 4th of July weekend. So I'm going to show you the elements of art, just show you some examples. Then I'm going to show you how to examine a piece of art and use the elements of art to your benefit to make an observation of a piece of artwork and make an analysis and really look at art and be observant and be able to make a critique on a piece of artwork just by knowing the elements of art in the back of your head. So I'm going to show you some artwork by this one of my favorite artists. His name is Jules de Balincourt. I'll explain more in detail in a bit. And then after that, I'm going to show you shading with pencils. So yesterday we were drawing lines. Now I'm going to show you how to shade and kind of how to hold a pencil. So I'm going to introduce the elements of art. Then I'm going to show you some artwork by Jules de Balincourt. Then I'm going to show you how to examine a piece of artwork. In this case, Jules de Balincourt's artwork, and write an art analysis. And then I'm going to show you a shading demo, and you're going to go along with me with the shading demo. Yeah, so let's get going. Okay, I'm going to show you the elements of art. So there's 7 elements of art. There's line, shape, form, value, space, texture, and color. And don't worry, we're gonna be talking about the elements of art a lot through this course. So if you can try to remember all 7 elements right off the bat, that's great. But if you're like me, who's very forgetful, you don't have to remember it, right away. But try to just, think about the elements of art when you're looking at a piece of artwork. And if you can think of, more than half of the elements of art, then you should be able to critique a piece of artwork. So let's start with the first one, and that's a line. So let me make this bigger. So a line is the path of a moving point. Some examples of lines: straight lines, horizontal lines, vertical lines, diagonal lines, curved lines, implied lines. Implied lines are like dotted lines, zigzag, squiggly, etc. And I'm just going to show you the examples that we looked at yesterday of the contour line drawings. Contour line drawings are perfect examples of lines in artwork. So if you look at this piece of artwork, how would you describe the lines? For me, I would say probably jagged. I think I said zigzagged earlier. Fast, maybe. That could be a word to describe lines. This could be crazy lines. All over the place lines. This one could be out of place lines, or I'm probably not thinking of, great words to explain lines, but you can see how, I'm kind of thinking deeply about what kind of lines this could be. So yeah, try to use adjectives to describe your lines. So I would probably describe this as, I don't know. Yeah, the same thing as kind of like maybe all over the place lines, blind lines, confused lines, childish like lines. Yeah, remember adjectives. Just again, I showed you these pictures yesterday, but the point of this is to show you lines in a piece of artwork. Some beautiful lines, flowy lines, that's a good one. Maybe some flowy lines. Yeah, especially for this drawing. So when we're looking at a piece of artwork, we want to describe the lines. So I would say this one could be calm lines, soft lines. Soft is actually a texture, but you can describe those lines. Adjectives, remember? I would say, jagged lines. Remember, this is the blind contour drawing. Let's see. Yeah, crazy lines, maybe. Crisp lines. Crisp lines. Clean lines. Next one is shape. A clearly defined area. So there's geometric shapes and there's organic shapes. Geometric shapes are, I'm sure you're familiar with geometrics. They're precise, regular, they're straight, they're formulated, and they're precise. And then there's organic shapes, and they're free form and they're irregular. And I'm going to show you some examples of geometric and organic shapes. But that's how you would describe shapes. A simple way to put it. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with a bunch of information, so this is just an example of organic shapes. These shapes look a lot alike, but they are different in size, I would say. This looks like probably mitosis, or I don't know, just looking at an organism under a microscope. Just more ideas of shapes. This looks like an abstract kind of drawing. So we got some geometric shapes, some lines. Got some geometric lines going down. Looks like, some narrow rectangles, and then we have circles and irregular shapes. Some more shapes. This is actually looks more like forms, and that's our next element of art. I might have put the wrong element here, but so a shape, I forgot to mention this, a shape, whoops. So this is form, a three-dimensional area or object, a 3D shape. Examples could be a cube, sphere, cone, cylinder, pyramid. So a shape is two-dimensional and it's flat. A form is three-dimensional. It's a three-dimensional shape. So a perfect example of three-dimensional artwork is ceramics or sculptures. And then two-dimensional is like paintings, drawings, right? So we have lines, shapes, and forms. So we're at forms now. This is our third element. And the way you can see forms and how you create the illusion of forms is by drawing value. And we're going to talk about value is the next element of art, I believe. And in order to make your drawings not look flat, you need to have good value in your drawings, and that's how it's going to make your drawings create that illusion of three-dimensional forms. Just some more examples of how lines can depict three-dimensional forms. It's kind of the same thing with the contour drawings, how you're not actually using shading or anything. You're just using lines to create that value and to make that illusion of a three-dimensional form. Just some more forms. So remember, three-dimensional. This looks like a wire sculpture. So we have lines, shape. Shape is two-dimensional. And then we have form, which is three-dimensional. Just some more examples of a three-dimensional form. Pyramids. A pyramid is the three-dimensional form. It's a three-dimensional shape of a triangle. And another example, three-dimensional shape of a circle is a sphere. Or we can have a cylinder, or three-dimensional shape of a triangle is a cone. So again, we have line, shape, and form. So we have those three: line, shape, and form. And in order to create a form on a two-dimensional surface, you need to have good value. So value is the darkness or lightness of a color. Some examples are gradation, shading, high contrast, and low contrast. Contrast is two elements that are the complete opposite of each other. So if you have high contrast, then you have two elements that are very different from each other. So black and white, right? So if you have a lot of contrast and value, you're going to see a lot of depth in your drawings. And I'm going to show you how to shade and create value at the end of this lesson. Just some more examples of value. So here's a still life of an apple. The light source is coming from the top left-hand corner, and then it's beating down on the apple, and then it's going to create a cast shadow. So here's an example of, say, so in this picture, the spotlight, or the light source, I should say, is at the top right hand corner. Or I'm sorry, it's at the top left-hand corner. It's actually kind of like at the, coming straight down from the top. And then it's hitting the sphere. And then you see a highlight. You have a transitional gradient. Then you have a shadow, which is at the bottom where it's not getting any light. Then you have the darkest value down here. And then you have reflected light, cast shadow, transitional gradient. So there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of things you want to think about when you're drawing realistically, and you want to create the illusion of form, which is a three-dimensional shape. Just another example of value. So the light source is coming from the top of the stairs. And then as you get more down into, this kind of looks like maybe a basement, it gets darker and darker. That's what makes it scary. Just some other examples of values. So you're going to have darker values in the foreground. So the foreground is the closest to you. So the space that's close. So the next element is space. And let's actually, so the value is darker the closer it is to you. And then as it gets farther and farther away from you, the value gets lower. There's less contrast. Here's a good example of pencils. So I believe with your art supplies, I got you a 2B pencil and a 6B pencil. This is going to be great pencils for drawing value. The mechanical pencils and the number 2 pencils don't work that great when you're trying to create value, but when we do the exercise at the end of this, you can just use a pencil, like a number 2 pencil or standard mechanical pencil, because it's just an exercise. It's not going to be a project. But once we get those art supplies, we'll be using those for sure. So this is what gradation is. It's the transition from light to dark or dark to light. You're gradually transferring from dark to light or light to dark. This is what value is. And we're going to make one of these boxes, this rectangular boxes at the end. So we have just regular shading, then we have some cross hatching, then we have some sketchy kind of lines, then we have some more kind of rough lines. It's not as soft. And then we have some letters right here, actually. So the next one is space. So we talked about, let me just refresh your memory. So we talked about line, shape, form, and value. Now we're at space. All right, so there's 7 elements. We're at space, which is number 5. And space is the area around, above, and within objects. Forms within the shape. So some examples are negative space, and that's the space that's around an object, and positive space. Positive space is the space within the object. And I'm going to show you some examples that will help explain that in more detail. And you also want to think about space when you're looking at a landscape. In a landscape, there's, at a picture, or even if you're just looking, if you're in a landscape, there's foreground, middle ground, and background. So the foreground is the ground that's closest to you. The middle ground is obviously the middle. And then the farthest space from you is the background. So where usually in landscape paintings, where the mountains are or the trees or the sky. And then you want to think about space when you're making a piece of artwork. Do you want your elements to be open? Do you want it to be empty, crowded? You want to create some overlap, detail, contrast. So like I said earlier, when you're drawing, we're going to do a lot of like perspective drawings, kind of like linear perspective drawings, and or we're going to do a landscape drawing, I believe. I want to do painting, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to paint today, and that's okay. We're going to do things that are just as fun. But when you're looking at a landscape, everything in the foreground is more detailed and less blurry, and then as you get farther away, everything that's farther away, it's less detailed and actually softer, and there's less contrast. So we're going to go to the second, or actually I'm going to show you some examples. So with space, you can see the darker values are going to be more in the foreground, and then as you get farther and farther out, there's going to be less and less contrast and less detail. These are some good examples. We might do this project. I don't think I had it in the outline, but I really like this one. It's where you have a still life of a plant, and then you just draw the outline of the plant, and then you paint the negative space in black. So the negative space is everything that is around the primary object, and in this case, it's the plant. Some more examples. So the other one, they did the negative space black, and then in this case they did the positive space black. And these are really interesting paintings. I like these a lot. There's some more like cross-hatching kind of lines. Obviously they did it all in pen. Looks great. But they didn't do, they just outlined it and then colored the negative space. Some student work. So for this one, they painted the negative space, the space that's around the object. Same with this one. All right, so now we have the second to last one. Number 6 is texture. Sorry, I should have numbered these, but this is texture. So the feel of an object to the touch. Many textures can be created through illusion. The same as form. When you're creating, when you try to draw, when you're trying to depict a shape to make it look like a three-dimensional shape, you're going to have to use value to create that illusion of a three-dimensional form. Texture is the same thing. You're going to have to create an illusion to make it, your drawings look like a certain texture. And some examples of texture are smooth, so you got to try to make your drawing look shiny. There's rough, hard, fuzzy, spiky, soft, scaly, pointy, etc. I'm sure you guys can come up with some examples yourself. We have some more twisted, porous, prickly, cellular, glowing, fiery, furry, motion, reflective, fierce. I can't really read that one. Fibrous and daunting. I like that word, daunting. And I think we're going to actually do, so I don't know if you saw in the outline, I'm going to be kind of pushing things back a little bit because we don't have supplies yet. But I think we're for sure going to do a pattern and texture project on Monday. And it's going to kind of look like something like this. Some more examples. I would call this kind of like a soft texture, but you can see on this painting all the brush strokes. Kind of want to, go up there and touch it, right? So texture. Here's just a photograph of charred wood. Just shows you like the burnt, kind of ashy texture. Here's just some examples of texture. At the bottom, you can see those crabs. They look a little rough texture. And we have some smooth, shiny rocks, smooth glass. And then he has some like texture exercises in those rectangular boxes. Another kind of texture painting. And sculpture, right? Rough texture. It's not very smooth. Like this one is a very smooth, shiny texture. And the other one was rough. Okay, so we discussed 6 elements. We had line, shape, form, value, and texture. All right, and now we're going to talk about color. So color is, and space. I'm sorry, I missed that one, in space. All right, so there's 6. Line, form, value, form, and texture in space. And now the last one is color, which is number 7. So color, to put it in the simplest of terms, it's light reflected off an object. And we're going to talk more about color theory on Monday. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with stuff, so let's just look at color. Oh, it's loading. Yeah, so color, this is an example of the primary colors. The primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. So when you're mixing paint and you're trying to get colors, you only need 3 colors. And that's the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. Again, we're going to talk more about color on Monday. But the primary colors, you can't mix any colors to get these colors. That's why they're the primary colors. Yeah, we'll talk more about this with value and color theory, but you can see how when you shade a color, it makes the value more darker, and then when you tint the color by adding white, it makes it lighter. So the pure color in the middle is actually called the hue color, and we'll talk about that more later. And this is a monochromatic painting. Monochromatic is just the lightness and darkness of a color, so a tint of shade of one color, and in this case it's purple. Let's see. Oh, and that's it. So, yeah, there's some other stuff about color that I wanted to talk about that, but we're gonna talk about color on Monday. But just remember, the elements of art are line, shape, form. So shape and form are a lot alike. The only difference is shape is 2D, form is 3D. And then value. Value, you create value by making your shapes look 3D, right? By shading. Then we have space, right? Think about landscapes and negative and positive space in the foreground, middle ground, and background. Then we have texture and color. Those are the 7 elements. Color, texture, space, value, form, shape, and line. So you gotta know these elements that, like the back of your hand when we're analyzing artwork. So let's look at artwork by Jules de Balincourt, and I'm gonna show you how to make an art analysis, and then you're gonna do one yourself. And then we're gonna talk about shading after that, all right? All right, welcome back. I know I said that we were gonna look at Jules de Balincourt's artwork first, but I figured we would do the value exercise first. So, and then we'll look at his artwork and do an art analysis. So what you're gonna have to do is get another blank piece of paper. If you have a sketchbook, that's even better. If you have a lined piece of paper, that's okay. But it would be great if you just had a blank piece of paper. And I'm gonna use a regular mechanical pencil because I know some of you guys all you have is mechanical pencils, and that's fine. We're just gonna practice how to hold a pencil, and I'm gonna show you how to create value. So when you're holding your pencil, when you're trying to draw value and kind of sketch, you don't want to put your fingers at the very end. This is gonna create a lot of tension, and you don't really have a lot of movement when you have your fingers all the way at the end. So you kind of want to bring it back a little bit, and we're gonna draw just some simple lines like this. And you kind of want to move your wrist like this, right? And again, you're gonna be following along with me doing this, and you're gonna turn it in, right? Now let's just draw some simple circles like this. Use your wrist, be really flowy, right? Do a variation of sizes. I did some large ones, some medium ones, some small ones. So yeah, that's good. Now we're gonna start creating value, and one way to create value is by cross-hatching, and this is cross-hatching. So we're doing parallel lines, and then I'm gonna turn my paper like this and do some cross-hatching, and then you're gonna wanna kind of space out your lines as you get farther and farther out. And I'm going to go back and kind of, right? So that's a way you can create value, but this is actually, there's some texture to this, right? It's kind of rough. And this is used for, comic book drawings, I'm sure you've seen. So for a softer approach, I would turn your hand like this. I have a mechanical pencil, so it's only a sharp point, but we can try to make this work. You're gonna kind of on the edge of your pencil, you're gonna create a softer kind of approach. Again, this is like a mechanical pencil, so it's still kind of rough. The reason why I'm using a mechanical pencil is because I'm right there with you guys with the art supplies. But you kind of want to start with a lot of pressure at first, and then you're going to slowly lift off with light pressure. You're going to create value, a softer kind of tone. You can actually use your finger too, go back and kind of soften it up a little bit. Yeah, not bad, right? All right, so let's try to make a gradation box. So you're gonna make a rectangular box. I'm gonna write gradation at the top. And this is gonna be my shade. This is where my dark values are gonna be. And the tints. And now I'm going to start right here. You want to start with the dark values first, and then slowly just kind of lift off. So that time I just held my pencil regularly, but then I'm going to kind of flip it over like this, right? When you have a regular pencil, like here, I'm going to use this number 2 pencil. You kind of have more of it's not as sharp, right? It's going to be softer. So I'm just going back. Right? And create a darker kind of values. And when you have a 2B pencil or 6B pencil, and this makes it a lot easier, you're going to see there's a lot of contrast. And let's talk about contrast right now, actually. So there's my gradation box. So it's the transfer of darkness to light and light to dark. That's what gradation is. And the darkest values are what it's called shading. It's a shade. And then the tint is the lightness of a color. Now we're going to make a couple more boxes, smaller ones, because I just want to show you what gradation is. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to show you what contrast is. So this is going to be high contrast up here. And this is going to be low contrast. This is just going to show you the difference. So when you have high contrast, you have more of an opposite, if that makes sense, of elements. So you're going to see a huge difference. You're going to contrast makes two elements clash with one another. It's kind of the same thing as juxtaposition. And we'll talk about juxtaposition later on in the class. But you can see how this has a higher contrast and a low contrast down here. So this is more dark compared to this light, right? And this is a little softer compared to that light. So high contrast and low contrast. right? It's two elements that are the complete opposite of one another. All right, so we're gonna draw a cylinder. First draw like an oval at the top, like that. And make sure it's a good size. You don't want it to be too small. And we're gonna draw two cylinders. So one, and then two, right? And then I'm gonna draw two lines going down for each cylinder. And then I'm gonna just draw a line that goes straight across on the bottom. All right. So I see a lot of mistakes in drawing. I mean, I even make the same mistake. My drawings can look flat. And when your drawings look flat, it's no good. You want them to pop out and stand out, and you want them to look realistic. When you kind of make a flat drawing, it looks very childish. So a flat drawing, I'm gonna actually outline these in bold. So I would go over the lines again and just kind of bold them up a little bit. I'm sorry, just for this one. Just for this one. So this is what a flat drawing looks like. A flat drawing has outlines. So I'm gonna write outline. So a flat drawing is like a 2D drawing. You wanna make the cylinder look two-dimensional, right? But when you don't have great value and you're just creating these outlines, your drawing's gonna look flat. So what you wanna do is you wanna create edges. And we're gonna do that by drawing good contrast. So I'm gonna start over here. I'm kind of gonna just, so I'm dark to light. I'm gonna actually turn my pencil like this, and then I'm gonna turn my paper, right? There we go, it's at a better angle, makes me more comfortable. You always wanna be comfortable when you're drawing or just making art. Sometimes it could be frustrating, but try not to let it get the best of you, because then you're just gonna give up and you're gonna get discouraged. And that's one of the main reasons why people quit things. It's because they get discouraged. So I'm creating edges. You don't want there to be any outlines. So I'm actually going to be shading the background as well. And even over here. I just want to kind of get my values in there. And then, so remember the light source is coming over here. So I'm just going to draw a little sun. So if the light is shining down right here, this area is going to get all the light. And everything that's farther away from the light is going to get the dark values. So I'm kind of like, as you can see, I would go this way, and then I'll go that way, and then maybe I'll use my finger to kind of soften it up a bit. I'm gonna see there's kind of like an edge right here, so I'm gonna try to, create that gradation. You don't want it to just stop, you want it to fade. So again, you don't want your drawings to look flat unless you're doing like a pop art painting or a cartoon, right? What we're shooting for right now is realism. We're trying to make this realistic, and we're trying to make this look like we can actually reach out and grab it. I'm going to draw a cast shadow right here. Remember that one example I showed you in the PowerPoint? This is my cast shadow. So you can see the difference, right? See how this is just flat? I didn't shade any background. There's not really much gradation. You can really see the outlines. We don't want to create outlines. We want to create edges. So this is 3D. Right. And this is going to be your highlight right here. It's your highlight. Yeah, and write all these notes down. This is going to be your light source. Light source. All right. I think that's about it. So good exercise. I just really wanted to show you the importance of value and how to create value by creating edges, not outlines. All right. So let's look at Jules de Balincourt's artwork, and we'll do an art analysis. All right, thanks for watching, guys. So what we went over today was the elements of art, and I showed you a shading demonstration, and I showed you artwork of Jules de Balincourt, and we did an art analysis, or I showed you how you would analyze a piece of artwork. I mean, I briefly explained it, but I want you guys to try that out yourself. I don't want to give away too many answers. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, not every lesson's gonna look like this, where I'm just, lecturing the entire time. Once we get more supplies, we'll do more artwork. Even if we don't have supplies, there's still a lot to learn. We're gonna make do until then, but we'll get them soon. Don't worry about that. And we'll do a lot of fun projects. Next time, we're gonna talk about color theory and the principles of art. So there's the elements of art, which are line, shape, form, value, space, texture, and color. Even I sometimes forget them, but try to, and we're gonna go over it more, as the class goes on. But yeah, in the meantime, you're gonna turn in your exercise, right, for shading, and your art analysis of the piece of artwork that I'm gonna post on the assignment, and that's gonna be by Jules de Balincourt. And that's about it. So next time we'll talk about the principles of art, color theory, and I think we're gonna do a pattern and texture project. If you guys have any questions, email me at istewart@heartdistrict.org, or I'll be on Google Meets at 11 if you need, some assistance with your exercises or your art analysis. And but if that's it, I will see you guys on Monday. All right, take care.